The government wants you to be obese, and 60 Minutes is helping them. I'm Tony. Welcome back to Streetball Strategies.
Just gotta stay strong, gotta hang on. It's always a brighter day after gray storms. Find your strength and stay strong, yeah. Keep working, keep striving, yeah. Don't quit, nah, just keep climbing.
This video is supposed to be a follow-up video to a video I did proclaiming that obesity should not be considered a disease. I was going to sit down with that 60-minute video and go point by point through it, reacting to it. And I did. I sat down trying to do that, but I soon realized that that 60-minute video goes in so many different ridiculous directions that it would have been a mistake to try to react to all of that. So instead, today I'm going to try to distill that video down and make two distinct points. The first being that I'm going to compare the obesity disease to another disease, asking the question why, if there is a miracle drug for obesity, how come there's not miracle drugs for other diseases, specifically the one we're going to talk about. And then secondly, I'm going to talk about all the things that that 60-minute video left out, all the stuff it didn't tell you about. So I'm going to go over what the obesity disease actually is and how it works, what the medication is and how that works, and all the other stuff they left out. And quickly, I just want to say, in the thumbnail to that last video about this 60-minute video, the thumbnail said, obesity is not a disease. And I do realize I was intentionally going over the top with that statement, but it was in response to what I felt 60 Minutes was going over the top. But I do admit that obesity is a real disease. It really does exist. Also, as we go through the rest of this video, there's a through line that I want you to keep in mind as we go through the rest of the video. That is this.
Let me introduce you to Carter's theory of criminal investigation. Follow the rich white man.
Follow the rich white man?
Exactly, now you're learning. Every big crime has a rich white man behind it waiting for his cut.
So I'm of course just being silly, but just because it's silly does not mean that it's not absolutely true. So now let's talk about why, if there's a miracle medication to stop obesity, why is there not other miracle medications for other diseases, specifically the one we're about to get into? The disease I'm comparing obesity to is alcoholism. The question being, if there's miracle drugs for obesity, why isn't there miracle drugs to stop alcoholism? So first of all, think about it. Alcohol beverages have existed for literally thousands of years. And during that time period, I'm assuming that humankind has just abused alcohol that entire time span. In comparison to obesity in America, that's only existed for about 50 years, because in the 80s, once fast food, fried food, junk food became readily available, cheaply available to us as Americans, we spent the last 50 years becoming more and more obese. So 50 years of obesity compared to thousands of years of alcoholism, you would think that by now, or at least within, modern human society, there would have been some kind of alcoholism drug. And the government tried that. Do you remember Prohibition? Prohibition was their answer to alcoholism. So it's 1920. Massive groups of people start to try to convince the government that alcohol is the root of evil. Alcohol is making men drunk or hungover at work, thus those men can't work efficiently at their jobs, costing their companies money, thus costing government money in taxes. Not only that, but alcohol is also causing domestic abuse at home, and then those victims of domestic abuse go out into the real world. They try to get jobs, but because of their trauma of domestic abuse, they don't work effectively, thus causing those companies to still lose money, thus causing the government to still lose money. Also, those domestic abuse victims are probably going to turn into alcoholics themselves. So comes along the 18th Amendment and the government bans alcohol. But the fallout they couldn't predict from that was an aspect of organized crime started that never existed before. So now you had underground illegal alcohol manufacturing and distributing taking place, and it runs rampant throughout the country. They make so much money that they now are paying off public officials and politicians so that they can continue to grow and make more money. But now you have an aspect of political corruption happening that never existed before. In the meanwhile, all of the companies, businesses related to alcohol that depended on alcohol are now gone. They're no longer legal, they're no longer making money, they no longer exist. So all the stores, bars, saloons, distilleries, breweries, all of those companies, all of those business making no money, thus they can't be taxed by the government. So now not only do you have organized crime that didn't exist before, you have political corruption aspects of it that didn't exist before, and the government is not making any money off of businesses that used to be alcohol based. They're losing money because of it. To remedy this, they bring in the 21st Amendment. It's the only constitutional amendment in history that completely appeals a previous amendment. So prohibition ends, and now the government can start making money off of alcohol again.
Follow the rich white man.
Not only that, but the alcohol industry grows so much and becomes so strong that it's one of the very few industries in American economy that even in a recession, alcohol is recession proof. In recessions, alcohol still makes money. So if alcohol is such a money-making powerhouse for the country, for the government, why would pharmaceutical companies and or the government ever even consider making an alcoholism drug to stop people from abusing alcohol?
Follow the rich white man.
Also keep in mind how we as a society perceive alcoholism compared to how we perceive obesity. To us, we've decided that alcoholism, alcoholics are bad. It's bad to be an alcoholic, to the point where we go as far to help them to have interventions for them. And in those interventions, so that we can help them be sober, most of those interventions are very positively based, so positive affirmations. But sometimes, in some cases, it can go as far as shaming the alcoholic to make them feel bad, whatever it takes to help get them sober so that they live a better, more prosperous life. So with alcoholics that we perceive to be bad, it's okay if we happen to shame them in order to help them and get them sober. But imagine if you were to shame an obese person. You would be ostracized, canceled, perceived to be a judgmental monster if you were to do that. Because we've decided that alcoholics are bad and they need to be sober. They need interventions. Whereas obese people, they're victims. We've decided they are victims and thus they need medication. Also keep this in mind, there's about 170 million American adults who imbibe alcohol. About 5% of them have the actual alcoholic disease. That's what we've decided as a society, and we accept that to be universally true. So out of that 170 million people who drink alcohol, only about 8 or 9 million of them actually have the alcoholic disease. In this video by 60 Minutes, they say that 110 million people, including children, have the obesity disease, and they infer that each and every one of those people, because they all have the disease, and because they all have the disease, they all need the medication. So, for instance, if it takes $1 billion in research and development to develop a miracle drug, be it for alcoholism or for obesity, for alcoholism, if you spend $1 billion researching and developing a miracle drug, but then you only have 8 or 9 million people to distribute it to, you're probably never going to make that money back. Whereas with obesity, now you have $1 billion in research and development, but you have 110 million people who can pay for that medication. So it doesn't matter how much it takes in research and development, how much money it costs, because when people start buying and getting prescribed that medication, you're going to be making money hand over fist forever.
Follow the rich white man.
That is why there is no alcoholism drug, because there's no money to be made there, but there definitely is, and there will be more and more obesity drugs. Now let's talk about all the information that 60 Minutes conveniently leaves out. The tiny bit of information they do give you is that the medication that they want you to be on, that it's hard to get and is expensive. What happens when you tell a populace that something, anything, is expensive and it's hard to get? Well, it obviously sparks interest. It creates demand for whatever that thing is. Do you think 60 Minutes didn't realize it, or the Harvard professionals somehow forgot or didn't realize that that's what they were doing? Of course not. They knew exactly what they were doing. The only other bit of information they give you about the drug is that it creates nausea and vomiting. So let's start off with exactly what is the actual obesity disease. Because in the 60 Minutes video, they make it seem as if it's just a simple brain disease. When in reality what it is that of the 110 million people that are obese, only 5% of them actually have the disease. And what that disease does is it takes the part of your stomach that creates a hormone called ghrelin and it makes it hyperactive. So now you have way too much ghrelin way too often. What ghrelin is a hormone that does a few different things, but the one thing that it's most noted for is it's the one hormone that travels from your stomach to your brain, signaling that you're hungry. It's known as the hunger hormone. People that have the obesity disease, they have way too much of that hormone way too often. And you could say, well, so what? Like, just because you're hungry doesn't mean you have to eat. But take into account yourself as an average person who doesn't have the disease. Think about what happens to you when you're hungry but you choose not to eat. Think about how long it takes for you to get irritable, for you to get hangry. Now imagine what it's like for someone who actually has the disease, who is much hungrier than you, much more often than you, and then they choose not to eat. Imagine how irritable they must be, how miserable they must be, because the only options they really have is choose not to eat and be miserable, or choose to eat, but when you do eat, because you're so hungry, you eat in larger portions than you should, and you eat more often than you should. And the more times during the day that you eat, the more opportunities you have to eat unhealthily. So that's what the disease is, and that's how it works. They don't tell you that in the video. Now, as far as the medication goes, what the medication is, it's comprised of semaglutides. Semaglutides are not revolutionary. We've known about them for decades. It's just that only in recent technological history have we been able to have the technology that allows us to configure those glutides in a way that have that drastic of an effect on your stomach. So you inject the semaglutide into your system, and then it travels to your stomach and it suppresses your stomach's ability to produce that ghrelin. So now you have less ghrelin, which means you're less hungry, which means you're gonna eat less and less often, which means you're taking in less calories, which means you're going to be in a calorie deficit, calories in, calories out, and thus you're going to lose weight. That's how the medication works. So let's talk about some of the things they conveniently left out of this 60-minute video. What they don't tell you is that because you have such low ghrelin levels, because you start eating so much less, so drastically and quickly, when you drop your calories coming in so low, so fast, you are going to lose a lot of weight quickly. But as I've said on this channel many times, especially in this fitness playlist, that when you lose weight quickly, you don't just lose fat, but you also lose muscle. So for example, if you start taking the medication and you lose 100 pounds because of it, 10 pounds of it's going to be water, 50 pounds of it is going to be actual fat, but then 40 pounds, yes, the percentage is that high, 40 pounds you're going to lose is going to be muscle. Then you might say, but I don't have any muscle to lose, like it's all, I don't have any muscle, it's all fat. It's not true. In that respect, muscle is kind of the opposite of fat, in that just because you can't see the muscle doesn't mean it's not there. It's inevitable, it's natural that the more body weight you have on your frame, the more muscle your body needs to create in order to maintain and just move and support all that extra body weight. It does take time to develop that muscle, but just because you don't see it just doesn't mean that it's not there. You don't just weigh as much as you do because you have so much fat, you also have a substantial amount of muscle. But when you lose that much weight that quickly, your body is not only going to take from fat, it's going to take from whatever calories it can get, and that's going to include muscle as well. And losing muscle sounds bad, but it actually is worse than it sounds. I'll get to that in a minute. That's not something they tell you in this 60-minute video. Also, what they don't tell you is, just like any other medication, especially a medication that acts so strongly on your hormones, there is an increased possibility of cancer. They don't tell you that. Also, they don't tell you that when you drop your calories coming in so low, so fast, you're at risk of making yourself hypoglycemic, which pretty much just means you're going to plummet your blood sugar. And for those of you who don't know what it's like when your blood sugar plummets, you feel terrible all the time. You feel lightheaded, fatigued. Everything feels difficult to do. Normal, mundane, everyday tasks feel harder than they should be. Everything feels heavier than it should be. You feel weaker than you should. You have brain fog. It's hard to go to sleep. It's hard to stay asleep. When you wake up, you feel perpetually groggy. You pretty much just feel like death day in and day out when you're hypoglycemic. It's not something they tell you in this video. They also neglect to mention that once you start the medication, you're probably gonna wanna be on that medication for the rest of your life. Because let's say you do start the medication and you do lose that 100 pounds. Well, let's say you try to be clever and you say, okay, well, I started the medication, I lost 100 pounds, I'm good now. I can come off the medication. Except for when you come off the medication, your abnormal ghrelin levels are going to rise to abnormal levels again. You've been suppressing them this whole time. Now they're coming back. Now you're gonna get hungry again the way you were before. And eventually, you're gonna eat the way you did before. And eventually, you're gonna put on the weight that you had before. The 100 pounds, you're going to put that all back on eventually. And also, as I've said on this playlist many times, when you put fat back on, especially quickly, your body can create fat fibers much easier than it can create muscle fibers. It's much more difficult to create muscle fibers. It takes much longer to do. And if you put fat back on, especially quickly, you're gonna put on that 10 pounds of water, but you're gonna put on 70 pounds of fat because you're only gonna be able to put back on 20 pounds of muscle when you've lost 40 pounds of muscle to begin with. And every time you do that, every time you lose fat fast and then gain it fast, every single time you gain more fat and lose more muscle. They don't tell you that in this video either. Two final points to end this video. First, they tell you in this video that the drug is expensive. What they don't tell you is that it's approximately about $400 a month, which is about $5,000 a year, which you or your insurance company or together have to pay. And remember, they want you to be on it for your entire lifespan. So that's $5,000 a year from 110 million potential payers.
Follow the rich white man.
Do you really think that they don't want to encourage you to be obese so that they can prescribe you this medicine? And by they, I mean the government, the doctors, the health professionals, the obesity professionals. Do you really think they are against you being obese? Second of all, think about how controlling powers in a country, say the government or, health officials, think about how throughout our entire history, how they have tried and been successful at controlling us. The best way to control a populace is to manipulate their emotions. The most effective emotion to manipulate is fear, by making you afraid, making you fearful. The best modality to make you scared is under the guise of safety. Safety, 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 safety. The best way to make you think your safety is in jeopardy is through health, saying that if you don't do this thing or that thing or this set of things, your health is going to be in danger. And in more modern society, what they have learned is that one of the best ways to do this is to target women, target mothers. Essentially, they'll say, hey moms, you want to be a good mom, don't you? You want your kids to be safe and healthy, don't you? Well, then you better do these things we're telling you to do. Otherwise, your kids are going to be in danger and you are going to be perceived as being a bad mom. They do this because they know essentially women run this society. They especially run all the homes in this society. So you get to the moms, you scare the moms, you scare the nation, then you control the nation. There are dozens upon dozens of examples of this throughout our nation's history, most recently with COVID, now with this obesity medication. They have figured out the most effective way to control us and manipulate us. That's what they are doing. I know that sounds like a conspiracy theory, and I am not a conspiracy theorist. I think conspiracy theories are a waste of time and thought. But the reason I'm prescribing to this particular one is because it makes complete sense to me. So I want to thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, if you found it informative or helpful, even if you disagree, go ahead and like this video. And obviously comment down below, especially if you disagree, because we can have discord, we can disagree, we can discuss things without it having to, you know, devolve into insults and all of that. So let's have a discussion, and as we do, please subscribe to the channel. Also, please hit that thanks button down below. When you comment, be it to agree or disagree, if you hit that thanks button, it will highlight all of your comments down below so they stand out. It also directly supports the channel, so anyone who does that, thank you very much, I do appreciate it. And as always, like I said, share this video with people that you think could help, right? If you think you know people who this video could give them information and help them out, please share this video with them. Comment down below, let me know what you think, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified whenever any of my videos go live on this channel. And until then, I will see you guys next week.
It's true emotion.
Don't get that medication.
I know them long nights start adding up. Working hard, so I know your back acting up. Can't call off, no sick time, no one to back you up. Got you feeling mad as fuck, but them bills adding up. Fight through the pain just so you can maintain. It's a lot on your plate, you feel it's hard to keep saying. You just gotta pray and keep on fighting through the rain, yeah. Cause I guarantee the sun is gonna shine again. I know you finna win, just keep on believing. Dream so close, you just gotta keep reaching. Sky is the limit, if you want it, you can get it. I know quitting very tempting, but don't give up on your mission. And don't listen to the critics, cause they talk but never lived it. And you could be the difference in what the world misses.